Resident Evil Death Island released on July 7th, 2023, and with its release marks the 4th animated feature film for Resident Evil. And with all the events being classed as canon, it's a bit of a wild ride. Now, to try and tackle this on my own would be a suicidal mission. So I've brought with me two very special guests, Philip Hoy and Spencer Davis, two of the co-hosts for In PS We Trust, the podcast that I run. And the reason why I brought them in is simple. They actually like this kind of stuff.
What have I done?
So guys, I think for the audience's sake, obviously I know you both very well, and for any listeners to the podcast, they know you too. But for those that have never seen your beautiful faces before, give me an introduction to who you are, what the Resident Evil series means to you. Spence, let's start with yourself first.
Sure, thank you for that kind introduction, my friends. So yeah, I adore Resident Evil, but I'm actually a relatively new fan in a sense. So I've always enjoyed the movies and kind of the games. But it wasn't until we started our podcasts, In PS We Trust, and you boys were on about Resident Evil all the time, that I actually thought, you know what, I'm going to sit down and play every single one in order and just see how I fare with it. See if I enjoy it as much as you guys. And then I fell in love. Resident Evil 2, specifically the remake. I've actually not played the original 2 and 3. I've not played 0 or Code Veronica or Revelations or some spin-offs. But I've played the main lines. I've played the main lines, and that's what counts, I think. I'm planning to play the others, but I just haven't yet. But I am in love with them, bar 3 of them, which I won't name. You can guess in the comments. But ever since, I've adored the series. I've watched every single movie, every animated movie, played most of the games, and I always think, maybe the next film. Just maybe the next film. I can't really give it a good or bad. Just maybe the next film.
Maybe they'll finally get it right, eh? Who knows? Phil, what about yourself?
Well, Davey, I'm glad you asked, and thank you very much for having us on your channel. It's an absolute honour to be on the SSJdavey channel. My God, big viewership. Hello, viewers. Hello, listeners. So yeah, I'm Phil. As Davey said at the top of the show, I'm his co-host on In PS We Trust. We pick through the news, the reviews, and all the things that are going on in the world of PlayStation, and we do that every 2 weeks over on the In PS We Trust channel. I'm sure there'll be links in the description. But my background sort of with Resident Evil is I'm a mega fan. I'm into everything and everything with Resident Evil, starting from the games all the way through the movies, animated, and the other ones that people don't tend to like. Even the series I quite enjoyed. Even behind me, I have a nice collection of the NECA figures as well. So I'm a bit of a mega fan. Love everything Resident Evil. My favourite of which is Resident Evil 2, the original. This for me is survival horror at its best. The PlayStation 1 version where you get to play Leon and Claire. Incredible zapping system with the scenarios A and B where you play things and they affect different things through the play throughout the game. Great puzzles, especially the library puzzle, the statue, the chess puzzles, great storyline, and one of the best bosses or bad guys throughout the whole series in William Birkin, I suppose, outside Wesker, because I am a bit of a fanboy, of course, for our man Wesker. But of course he wasn't in Resident Evil 2, but as soon as he turns up, my ears peak. And he did have a little bit of a mention in Death Island, which is quite nice, a little nod. But yeah, he wasn't a main character, and it was just more of a nod. But yeah, that's a little bit of background on me. I've played everything, seen everything, and done everything Resident Evil.
Well, that's it, audience. You now know the guys a little bit better. It's about time we dive in and unpack Resident Evil Death Island. Before we start diving into the real meat and the juice that comes with Death Island, I think it's about time that we just get our high-level thoughts out of the way. So I suppose all I want to know is, did you enjoy it? And that's pretty much it, right? And then from there, what we'll do is we'll actually start unpacking it. We'll go through the order of the film, and we'll just pick out bits that interest us. And this will be a spoiler discussion. So for those of you that haven't seen the movie, maybe judging from the high-level kind of conversation that we have now, that might dictate to you if it's worth your time or not. Let's go back round the circle. Spence, over to you. What did you think about the film?
Sure, so I found the film very fun. I thought it was a fun film, and I thought it was a film. I thought it was decent, okay? I thought it was good
film.
in the same way that every other film is, where it's fun to watch, a good bit of action, so-so story, as the games, I suppose. But they're good in the sense that they're fun to watch, not in how they portray our beloved franchise, Resident Evil. And I think this one has a bit more nods to the whole franchise's history, and it's a bit more trying to keep in line with it. But I think it falls short. So I think it's fun. If you're a fan of the series, maybe give it a watch. It's not going to make you like the series more, but it's fun. And it's nice to see all those characters actually together in one place, even if it doesn't make an awful lot of sense. But it was fun. That's what it's a fun film. Leave it at that.
If you had to rate it out of 10, how would you rate it?
5.
5 out of 10. Okay. All right. Okay. Phil, what about yourself?
A 5. Wow, we are really starting out strong. Well, my sort of review of Death Island, well, top level thoughts anyway. It's an above average animated Resident Evil movie for myself. That probably doesn't say a lot. It had a lot of action. There's story in it, I kind of guess. There's a little bit there. We got to see all 5 of our heroes, where, in my opinion, only 2 of them really mattered throughout the story. The other 3 were just kind of tacked on, I thought. Of course, this was the first time we saw Claire return to the series after Resident Evil 5. And this is the first time we saw Leon and Claire actually meet, which was a hype moment for myself. I feel like this one represents the games quite well, and it stuck to a lot of the tropes a Resident Evil fan is kind of expecting within the movies. The movie itself, as Spencer said, it was a little bit dumb. It is just dumb fun. Although it is very self-aware of itself, and it does poke fun at the Resident Evil series, which I enjoyed a lot. There was a particular moment with the interplay between the antagonist and Chris, where he was joking that everybody dies on his team, because I think that was something as a fan we've always noticed through the games, but they've never sort of mentioned, and this was the first time that it sort of got brought up as a joke within the series itself, which was quite good. And it was all tied up within an hour and a half, so it's actually the shortest animated movie, and for me it didn't outstay its welcome. But yeah, it was just dumb fun. I think Spencer's right in saying that you kind of have to be fans of Resident Evil to really enjoy this and really get your money's worth when watching this one, but I enjoyed it overall.
Well, I think following up on that, I think this film was just totally average. I mean, straight away, when we talk about how it starts, it's like, it's straight in there. You know what you're kind of in for within about 10 minutes of this film going. And I watched it, and I wasn't expecting anything amazing. You know, the last film, we had like gung fu on top of like a building, right? Where they're like dancing around each other, shooting pistols. So what did you kind of expect as a follow-up? Overall, though, didn't really work for me. I think there's some moments that there's some actual nice Easter eggs in this, which we'll come to as we talk, I'm sure. And it's certainly better than some of the live action Resident Evils that we've had in the past, especially Welcome to Raccoon City, which, we'll never mention about that ever again, hopefully. Yeah, I think overall, I'd probably give it a 4.5. I think around there. I think if you're talking 10 is, a masterpiece, that's like one of the best films in cinema history, right? 4.5. But if you're talking about on the Resident Evil scale, probably a 7 compared to the rest of the Resident Evil movies. Because I don't think there's been one so far that's been like absolutely insane, right? Especially in the animated department. But that's a discussion for another time. So let's dive into how this begins. So the movie opens where you're in the back of like a SWAT truck and you're thinking, oh, what's going on? You notice everyone's got umbrella logos. Where are they going? What's going on? They're heading to Raccoon City, baby. It's Resident Evil 3 or Resident Evil 2 kind of time. I guess more Resident Evil 3 time. You're going in there to try and get out these execs. And that's how it begins. And so you get a little look there at a little character who's going to have a pivotal part to play on his journey across this entire film, and his comrades. And they're all joking about each other. What should we do? And they're like, oh, kill civilians. We just got to kill them. Don't worry about it. Just get the execs out. And next thing you know, everyone's been murked or bitten, right? Everyone's been absolutely wrecked. They're in the back of a meat factory. and it's all kicking off, and you realize, oh god, this SWAT team were not prepared. Guys, with the opening, was it hype to be back here in 1998 Raccoon City time?
I think if you're going to start anywhere, you've got to go back to Resident Evil 2 or 3, haven't you, really, right? For me, it's the hype moment. As soon as I knew they were going back there, I was kind of thinking, oh, we're going to get to see this and we're going to see that. We didn't really see a lot. We just got to see, as you explained, sort of the opening between the Umbrella employees, and we were introduced to, I suppose I can say now, the antagonist of the whole movie, Dylan, and his best friend, JJ. So they are kind of off-duty Umbrella security service, and they've got drawn into this battle to kind of protect the Umbrella execs and get them out of Raccoon City. So I thought it was a really strong opening. I thought it was a good way of introducing kind of our main bad guy and kind of give him some backstory, because I think with a lot of Resident Evil, it's pretty weak in that department, having just played 6. The background on characters generally is not the strongest, so it's quite nice to sort of learn a little bit of the background of Dylan, and I appreciated it. I thought it was a strong opener.
Wow, strong opener, wow. What about yourself, Spence?
I thought it starts and you think, oh, I wonder where they're going. Oh, what a shock. Raccoon City. There's not a single bit of backstory in all of Resident Evil that isn't Raccoon City, other than in Village, where it's actually, oh, Spencer, oh, that was interesting. What a shock this starts in Raccoon City. Oh my god, I never would have guessed. It's everything is Raccoon City, man. This a new strain of the T virus. Whoa, surprise. I honestly, that opening didn't make me feel anything. I just thought, yeah, of course they are. Why wouldn't they be going to Raccoon City? Yeah, of course. What a surprise.
I love this whole thing that it's been like 20 years or whatever. This is set, when is this set, this film? 2017, is it?
2015.
2015. All right, so it's been, what? How many years is that? Let's do the maths. Quick maths on this. 17 years? Is that since 1998? And
yeah,
here we are, and they're still referencing it. And, I mean, spoilers for Dylan later on as we bring him up. How this guy got to any semblance of power when he's just a little lackey soldier is beyond me. Absolutely beyond. I have no idea how somebody who barely survives Raccoon City is then all of a sudden got this kind of wealth and ability to be able to do this kind of stuff.
So as much as in my opener I said that this was a strong start, I didn't have to think that I'd have to caveat everything with this is a Resident Evil movie, okay? So you've got to lower your expectations a little bit with this one. But for Dylan, I did say it was a strong opener and we got a bit of backstory, but that's the only backstory we got with this, because the series quickly moves on afterwards, and we don't really get to learn much more of his background from between where he starts and where he finishes.
Apparently everyone who just survives Raccoon City is just either a hero or they somehow come into a shitload of money and are able to develop these bioweapons because, yeah, sure, why not, right? Everyone that seems to come from this one point in 1998 and then it just splits off like a telltale story, but everyone comes together at the end where they're an evil corporate overlord, right? It's the way it naturally goes. But we move from that opening scene where it all goes horribly wrong and all the teammates are all going to be dead and going to turn into zombies. Immediately then, we meet up with our main man, Leon. He's on the back of a motorbike. He is sitting there trying to track down some kind of research. I don't even know what he was doing at the start. Does anyone actually know what he was up to?
Yeah, so Leon S. Kennedy, he was on the trail of the kidnapped DARPA scientist, okay? So this is our scientist, Dr. Antonio Taylor, which we get introduced to once we visit the island. But he was on the trail of the kidnapper. But yeah, I'll leave it to you to explain what he was doing there with the action scene that we got directly after.
Hang on, so he'd only just been kidnapped at that point? And then they develop all that quickly.
He was on the trail.
It must have been like the next day. Like, what?
He works fast, mate. He works fast. We get this crazy action scene, which immediately kind of sells you on what you're in for the rest of the movie. Leon's on the motorbike, and I'm thinking, okay, all right, this is looking quite normal. He's just in a high-speed pursuit. I thought, all right, okay. Not exactly Resident Evil-like, but, you know, RE6 does it. And so you're following along, and all of a sudden, you got some bird who's flipping over with excessive amounts of slow-mo, flipping over, landing on. They're having like a fight where, for some reason, and I thought about this when I watched it, and I've watched this film twice now, once just before we went to record. Leon's got a chance to end it like immediately because he catches up to her and he could just turn, shoot her. But instead, for some reason, they seem to want to drive off and shoot behind them into traffic. The amount of people that probably died from just Leon just blind firing these bullets. And for some reason, for how cracked Leon is as an agent, which we see later in the film where he's taking out enemies like they're nothing, he couldn't hit that motorbike for shit. But, you know, he eventually hits the wheel, it bursts, and she does some kind of crazy, like, 25-foot jump, lands on the front of Leon's bike, and slams the brakes on, right, with her high heels. Cool ass action scene. Like, I was like, whoa, that was actually really sick. But I was laughing throughout the entire thing, because I was thinking, right, okay, nothing really has changed since Vendetta. We're just going along for this now, and it's going to be high octane. Did this kind of crazy opening work for you guys? Spencer, start with you.
Sure, okay. So it's to be expected, I think, with a Resident Evil animated movie. I mean, I first saw a woman on a motorbike and I thought, Ada? And I saw the outfit and I thought, oh, no chance, never mind. And then I was like, who the f is that? And it's someone from another animated movie that I haven't seen in probably like 6 years or whenever it released, because no one's keeping up to date with the animated movies, but we'll get to that later. In terms of the sequence itself, Leon couldn't hit shit. Absolutely couldn't until he did. Suddenly got a perfect shot on her tire, which actually helped her out. Cheers, Leon. She drops 3 cars off of like a loader truck onto Leon. And then at the end of the scene, there's still cars coming by as if that wouldn't have caused the worst traffic jam anyone's ever seen. Loads of cars just flying by him as if that never happened. It's actually ridiculous. And the fact that she flings off the bike when he shoots her tire, he had to steer 10 inches to the left and she'd have been dead. But no, he just thinks, oh, here she comes. Here she comes. I'll stay here. And then bang. And then does that. It was fun. It was really fun. It was really stylish, especially when she runs on that side of that truck.
Yeah, that's
I thought
sick.
that was a really cool scene. That was sick. And then Jill kind of does the same thing later as well. Ooh,
Yes.
little nod. I thought it was a fun scene, but really quite stupid. But I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. I was laughing through it as well.
Phil, were you along for the ride on this one?
Absolutely ridiculous scenes, mate. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And there was 2 parts of that just really grinded my gears. My God, it just really annoys me. I have a motorbike. I drive a motorbike. And in the UK, you have to wear a helmet. Okay? So we've got this femme fatale dressed in high heels with a lot of flesh on show, without a helmet, doing backflips and shooting guns. And then you've got Leon S. Kennedy twisting round, shooting from the hip with his gun, again without a helmet. What is going on? First off, if the police had just seen him, if that was in the UK, which it isn't, it's in the US, so they're allowed to do this madness, drive bikes without helmets, they'd be pulled over straight away. Let alone they're shooting things off the back of, you know, trailers and things are piling into other traffic. And as Spencer said, they're all just driving past as if it's the best day ever. They didn't stop. It would have been the biggest news in the world, just that happening, let alone the zombie outbreak. There's just been a massive crash in California where thousands of, well, not thousands, hundreds of people have got caught in this big accident. Surely that would be the biggest news here. My God. But the 2 things that annoyed me, her outfit, absolutely ridiculous. Don't understand why they still have to do this. And 2, why the fuck aren't they wearing helmets? Come on, safe driving, kids. Put your helmet on before you get on your bike.
I love this. I love that we're so hung up on just taking like reality into account. Like, how aren't other drivers killed? Why is Leon doing this? I love this. And especially, like you said, the craziest thing, right, is that they get into like a massive crash. Like, Leon's bike is total. And it totally written off, right? Insurance would never cover it. And he's sitting there and he's like, I love that bike. And I was thinking, Leon, you're just standing in the middle of the road, not even looking at traffic that's coming at you. Like, how aren't you dead? Like, surely Surely. There's like traffic, like the occasional beep coming past him. Bro, he'd be squished in like a second. And that's the end of Leon Kennedy just squished on the highway from some random guy not paying attention. You've seen at the start of Resident Evil 2, that guy's eating a burger, right? He's driving along in the middle of the night and he hits a zombie. Thank God this wasn't at night, because Leon would have been paced, bro. He would have been absolute paced. But I do like we're getting hung up on bringing the reality into this over-the-top madness. But nevertheless, a fun little scene. And so from there, it moves directly then into kind of bringing in the rest of the cast. So we get a shot of Jill Valentine, the girl, the absolute goat of Resident Evil, is back. Long, long awaited. Hasn't changed a day. Not even changed her outfit from Resident Evil 3. But, you know, if it's a classic fit, why change it, right? And so she's in the mix, and it starts off, and it's like a really spooky kind of house where she's going against Chris's orders, and she's investigating. And I really liked the atmosphere that was going on in there as she was searching from room to room, and she notices a dead body, and then as she walks out, shock horror, zombie. And they have this awesome bit, right? And I loved it. I loved it twice now that I've seen it, where she like skateboards a zombie off the top of the stairs, right? Like flips over him. And then as they land on the glass table, that doesn't smash it, but she stands off of it and just pumps like half a clip into the zombie, and then the glass just goes and shatters everywhere. And I was like, oh, that was a sick shot, where she like rides the zombie onto the ground. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, this is cool. This is like, Jill's so sick, man. I fucking love that. So are you guys happy that we finally see the return of Jill Valentine to the franchise of Resident Evil? Because the last time we saw her was Resident Evil Revelations, which has been a goddamn long time, guys. Phil, let's come across to yourself.
It has been a hot minute since we've seen Jill, and by God, has she changed? She's changed in the badass department, because I felt there was a certain energy with Jill that had been upgraded. I felt like everybody else kind of was the same character that I was expecting from previous games, previous animated series, but Jill herself was just on it. Okay, she'd been through some trauma, going through all the stuff that she did in 5, with Wesker, playing with her mind, and everything that happened to her over in the Revelation series. But Jesus Christ, she's got a big upgrade. She's badass. My girl is flying these days. And yeah, you're right. When she flew off the second floor of that building onto that glass table and shot through the zombie, I was like, yeah, get it, girl. That was incredible. Loved it.
Spence, you're a big fan of Jill Valentine in more ways than just one. Were you happy to see her return?
I was buzzing, mate. I think that's the best scene in the film, probably. I thought that was awesome, that whole scene. And seeing Jill, she looks as beautiful as the day she left us. God damn. It's been quite a few years. She looks the spit image of the original Jill. What a dream. Been through so much. She has come out way more badass, Phil. You're 100% right. She is, like you said, Davey, that scene with the glass table is so sick. The way it shatters, and she doesn't even like bend her knees. She just lands. She's like, fuck you. But the only issue I have with Jill in this entire film, it's the same voice actor as the game. But she sounds like a 13-year-old trying to sound tough. She's like, I don't have time for backup, when she enters the building. And it's like, what do you mean? Yes, you do. She sounds like such a tryhard in the whole film. And at the end, I'll get to it at the end, but there's one part of dialogue from Jill at the very end of the film that really, I was like, Jill, just settle down.
The thing is, Spence, she's investigating a zombie outbreak. Jill's seen it all before. She's walking in, she rolled her eyes at that zombie and thought, here we go again. She didn't need backup, did she? Really?
Well, it was a bit ropey. It was a little bit ropey, as it always is. But ultimately, she's a main character, so no, she never needs backup. That's the way Resident Evil goes. But that scene, I think, is my favourite scene from the whole film. I thought that scene was excellent.
It's an awesome scene. I really enjoyed that. And I think it's just the atmosphere. I think it just slows down for a moment and just kind of embraces more of like a kind of horror vibe, if you can get that. And so I was a little bit torn when I got to that point. I thought, wow, are we going to be getting some kind of semblances of horror? But unfortunately, it doesn't really appear again throughout the entire film. It's just full on, full throttle throughout the entire thing. Now, guys, before we start diving into more and more of this story, I think it's probably a good point here to kind of just go through some little bits in terms of like the character Easter eggs. We've mentioned a few that have come up here and there, but I think with Jill's introduction, we then go back to the station for the BSAA, and we kind of just get everyone. We get Rebecca Chambers, we get Claire Redfield, we get Chris. Leon doesn't turn up until a little bit later, but you get Jill as well. And so they're all kind of together, and it gives a lot of chance to be able to set where this film is based in terms of the Resident Evil narrative, because these events for some reason are classed as canon. And it also just gives some chance for some Easter eggs, which are used a little bit smarter than they were in, say, Welcome to Raccoon City. Now, did you find the Easter eggs actually land for you guys, or were they something that you thought, oh, I could probably do without this?
I'd say, well, it depends on which Easter eggs, I suppose. Because the Easter eggs at that point, I thought were quite good, with Chris mentioning Piers from RE6. Phil, how you said during the opening of this show about Chris's whole thing of taking a team on a mission, all of them dying. And with Piers, he was the only one who survives. And it's kind of, well, not survives, he goes on another mission with Piers.
Piers does die, doesn't he? He gets that electro powers at the end, and then sacrifices himself to let Chris go, doesn't he? And which everyone,
but
for some
he's
reason,
the only one who actually survived long enough that they could bond a little bit.
I mean,
every other soldier Chris has ever had has been toast on day one, whereas Piers at least lasted 5 chapters, you know?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, would you class Rebecca and Jill in this list? And I suppose Barry by that aspect as well. They all survived on RE1, but then I suppose Chris wasn't leading it then, was he? That was Wesker's job to lead.
Yeah. They weren't his soldiers, mate. They weren't his soldiers. Whereas at this point, he's obviously traumatized, probably, but he just keeps doing it. And I appreciate that mention of Piers. I then appreciate the whole... I don't like how they delivered it with Chris speaking to Rebecca. She's like, Jill making sure she's okay, all that. He's like, you talking about when Wesker brainwashed her? And he's like, what? Obviously that's what she's referring to, yeah. He's like, that's not her fault, we don't blame her. And Rebecca's like, Jill does. And it's like, oh, tell him, Rebecca. That's nice. I like that. But the way it was delivered, I thought was absolutely abhorrent. I thought it was terrible. But I appreciated the Easter egg. I thought the whole Piers one was a bit better. But I don't like them bouncing them off each other so much. Just kind of be like, here's an Easter egg. Oh, here's another. Ooh, it's a Resident Evil film. Ooh. But I'm glad they exist. And I thought the first one was handled quite well.
What about yourself, Phil?
I was just glad we didn't get a Jill sandwich in this one, because I've heard that way too many times. But the reference that I probably enjoyed the most was Leon with his kind of short one-liners that he delivers, I think, multiple times throughout the film, and that's great to kind of bring Leon's personality through. And for people that sort of haven't played him through the games and maybe is watching Death Island for the first time, and this be your introduction to Resident Evil, Leon's famous for this, right? And that's why, I suppose, for Spence, some of this stuff maybe seemed a little out of place when they were kind of forcing these kind of references to the characters. But for me, as a super fan, I loved them. But I think the explanations needed to be there for some of them, just to introduce maybe the new crowd to this one.
For me, guys, I fall very much on the side of I really like them. I like them pretty much throughout the entire thing. Sure, they were forced, but without having to like go onto the internet and research when is this set, be able to have like these little bits that people chuck in is enough for me to go, oh, okay, so it's after RE6. Right, I don't need to know anymore. Like, I can't remember the year that RE6 was set off the top of my head without a quick Google. So to be able to just get that and to know that it's mentioned in Piers, oh, okay, it's after RE6. And that was enough for me. But like you said, I think that the way the characters all kind of interact off each other is pretty good in terms of setting out where they are. Like, Chris is like your Captain America, you know, your guy that's straight-laced, no real humor from him, just a guy who just does the mission, right? Just a big, tough guy. Leon then is a little bit more sassy with it, and he's got like a little bit more personality. And especially that was obviously brought out quite a lot from RE4, and so that's kind of now become his thing. And it really does set him apart from the rest of the guys in the Resident Evil sphere. I do get what you're on about though, Spence, in terms of sometimes they can feel a little bit forced, and sometimes you think like, oh, do we need another one here? Like, especially at the end, and I know we're jumping about a bit here, but right at the end, there's some writing there which was just awful. Like, absolutely awful. I think I've actually written it down. Hold up.
I know what it is.
Oh, God. Yeah, I got it. So when they're talking about, they're talking about the end, and they're talking about prison tours. Prison tours suck, and it's just like, oh. The one
So
time,
the gigantic shark monsters.
oh dear God, it's so cringy. The one time I liked it though is that bit where they're in the sewer, and it's Jill and Leon, and they've like never interacted in Resident Evil before, to my knowledge. And they're there together, and Leon makes a joke, and it just completely passes by Jill. And what I would have liked is if it had just been, instead of like, they stay on it a bit too long. Like Leon makes a joke, and then she's like, what? And it should just cut to him, and it just be a little bit awkward. And then it moved on. Instead, he then explains the joke to her, and I was like, oh, don't do that. Where he's like, you asked how many were left. It's like, oh, no, you should just gone at him, and he's just awkward. He's like, oh, I'm used to saying these to myself. You know? Like, I'm not used to bouncing this off someone else. So that, you know, I thought that was a bit of a wasted opportunity.
It's a bit of a David Brent moment, isn't it? Where he makes like a joke, and he should just look at the camera as if, you know, the audience are going to laugh at this one.
Yeah.
That would be hilarious if he did something like that.
Yeah, it should have.
Because who's he saying to him in his previous games? He's solo, as you said.
Unless he just got the radio on and he's just doing everyone's tits in. Like all the bad guys in 4. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is why all the bad guys hate him so much. Maybe while he's narrating, while he's killing all these, you know, Ganados everywhere, that he's just got it on. So, like, Lord Sadler's sitting there in his throne room and he's just listening to all these one-liners. Oh, that was a close one. Take this. How's this for fire? Is that hot enough for you? And then he's like, oh, God. Someone turn the radio off. Put on BBC One.
Surely it's either just him keeping himself sane, which in that situation understandable, or maybe as a child he just loved Spider-Man, loved the way he always quipped every time he was fighting his foes, and he thought, I'm gonna bingo. Is everyone off to bingo? That's Spidey would say that.
Yeah, maybe we're putting a bit of headcanon into this entire thing. The thing about all these characters getting together is, for me, there's one character that's just been done dirty now twice, and I think, to be fair, out of everyone, I think she gets done the worst. And for me, it's Rebecca Chambers. I think Rebecca Chambers is criminally undervalued in terms of Resident Evil. You think she's the original person that survives the mansion. She's been through more than Chris, more than Jill, any of those guys. She goes through an entire game before even meeting up with the mansion incident, right? An entire other complex. And here, she doesn't even have a gun. Her only job is to carry in a vaccine, and all her entire crew die frame 1 arriving on that island. She does literally nothing else.
But her memory's pretty bad, isn't it? Because when she appeared in 1, she happened to forget everything that happened in 0.
Yeah, she did,
So maybe it's just that. She just completely blanks out every time, and she's got to relearn everything. Every time she appears, she just no knowledge of the previous appearances. So if we do see Rebecca in a future animated series, or if she, you know, turns up in Resident Evil 9 or 10, or sometime in the future, or maybe one of the Revelations, she's going to forget everything.
Yeah, she won't be able to. She'll be like, a gun? What does this do? I think it might even like flip to her at home, and she doesn't know how to eat. Like, she has to relearn everything every day. You know that Adam Sandler film where 50 First Dates, where he takes that bird out that's got that short-term memory loss? She's got that, but it's long-term, and it's only specifically for any events that would actually help her in combat encounters. She just cannot remember them. They just do not stick out. But to me, she's totally wasted. She turns up, she literally does nothing. She just sits on a computer all the time, and then comes in with the vaccine clutch, and just makes just enough to do it, you know, and cooks up that antidote in no time at all. Where is she when coronavirus is kicking off? We could have had that done and dusted immediately, but she's too busy sorting out T-virus variants, I guess.
Yeah, it was a little sad just to see her relegated to becoming the girl behind the desk. She didn't really play too much of an action role in this, but she did pick up a rocket launcher or some kind of shotgun or something later on with the end boss fight, so she became badass at the end, I think. So she had a very slow build-up, but I think at the end she did some cooler things. So she did get her time to shine, and that was very much in the end boss fight. But yeah, you're right. I think she has been criminally underused throughout the whole of Resident Evil, really. So fingers crossed we do get to see her in a future edition, maybe 9, possibly.
Do you guys feel like everyone here was treated kind of equally? Or do you feel that it was more of one character's story compared to the rest.
Hey, it's Jill's story. It's 100% Jill's story, even though it really isn't. Because, like I said with that whole nod to Jill's past in RE5, where she was brainwashed and overtaken, after they mention it, it's never brought up again. And the whole plot, nothing to do with it either. And even though it's a Jill story, it'd be nice to see her kind of confronting it. And they make her the main character, with the villain, obviously, doing what he does to everyone except her. Instead of her actually dealing with her trauma, he's like, you're gonna live mine. And it's like, she doesn't even. She fucks off. She really doesn't. It's definitely Jill focused, but not in the right way. Not in any way that actually progresses her character. And it's every other character, I feel like, sure, Claire and Chris, you never for a single second see them separated, other than the final 5 minutes, because they couldn't do them separate for some reason. Other than, I suppose, Chris in that house with Jill as well. But it's just they just didn't do enough for each character. It was a short film, so they couldn't do a lot. But the reason they made it Jill focused, but not in a way that actually makes it about Jill. So it was just a bit strange. But it's 100% Jill's movie.
I agree with what you're saying there, Spence. 100% it was Jill's movie with a side serving of Leon S. Kennedy. I felt really bad for Claire through the whole movie, but not as bad as I have previously. I know in previous movies she's been pretty much just the kind of damsel in distress, and she hasn't really stepped into the Claire Redfield that we know from the games. And when she started off investigating monstrous fish, I just rolled my eyes and thought, here we go again, she's going to do hardly anything in this movie. But I was quite glad that they did include her in certain aspects of the film. But as I said in my opener, it's very much just Jill and Leon, with Claire, Chris and Rebecca just kind of filling in the gaps. And personally, I don't know if they're needed in this movie, but I appreciate them being there. And I like seeing the team together, a la Avengers.
Yeah, it's good to get everyone back. You're totally right, both of you guys. I think they just didn't handle this very well, especially with character growth. Like you said, Spence, you said about Jill Valentine's whole thing. It's supposed to be getting over her trauma, right? Not being reckless. What does she do right at the end? She takes a flare to get the monster's attention so that she could put like an explosive in its mouth, gets caught underwater, like choking out, somehow gets out there right in the nick of time. And I thought, she's learned nothing throughout this entire adventure. Literally, if anything, she's gotten worse. And no one mentions it. No one's like, well, that was pretty risky, but it all paid off in the end, Jill. There wasn't even that. It was just a case of, we just will not go here in this movie.
It's actually worse than that, because she's reckless at the start when she enters the house, and Chris tells her off. He actually has a talk with her. He's like, look, I know, but if you die, others are dying. You can't be like this. And then she does it again, and at the end, he's like, I'm glad you're back, Jill. You're like, what are you on about? She's not listening to you, mate. Just work somewhere else. Don't work with her. She's going to get herself killed. It's ridiculous, that whole thing. And that scene you mentioned with the flares, that is the scene I hate. She's like, come on, come here, look at me. And then at the end, she just goes, come here. I'm like, oh my God, man. The dialogue was abysmal. I feel like as much as it was Jill's film, I think Jill herself got done dirty somehow, but they did it to her.
Yeah, I think the two characters that were actually done justice here are Chris and Leon, just because they're like the solar kind of opposites of each other, and they both did their respective roles justice. But yeah, I agree, it was weird to see that entire kind of like subset backstory thing picked up with Jill, and then just nothing done with it, just totally dropped at the first possible chance they got. It's just left. And I mean, speaking of other backstories that seem to be dropped, let's do a little bit on Dylan Blake, shall we? Because I mean, the main plot here at this point, all that's happened is they realize that everything's going off, and the reason why all these people are dying is because they visited Alcatraz. And so they decide, right, let's go to Alcatraz and have a look, see what goes on. It immediately kicks off, and there's zombies everywhere, huge fight, massive action scene. And I wonder how anybody gets out of where they are. And the crazy thing is, you get loads of like cuts that just go from somebody being in a total death sentence. Like there's this section where Claire Redfield's in this room, all these zombies are turning, and I think, oh my God, how the hell is she going to get out of here? She's got no pistol bullets. Next thing you know, she's out of there and she's just with the rest of the gang. No idea how she got out, but she somehow MacGyvered her way out of that situation. So that was obviously left on the cutting room floor. But the main thing here on this point is that we're just building up the backstory of Dylan Blake. Now, this guy, we've already mentioned him to a top level, but Dylan Blake is an absolute dickhead. And I honestly don't get why, as soon as you rise up in the ranks of Umbrella, you just become this. So he abducts this doctor who's doing all this research for him, which we've already established he did in like a day. So he's done like an entire team's work, what takes years in like no time at all. He's an amazing scientist. And then you're behind him, tapping your cane to put the fear of God into the guy, and then you play Russian roulette with him. And then he's surprised that the doctor runs off. I'm like, what do you expect? I wouldn't work under these conditions. Like, absolutely not. He just tried to like kill himself, and for some reason, Dylan, and I don't really understand why he's got this fetish, just wants to play Russian roulette with himself all the time. Every single time he's in a conversation with anyone, he empties his pistol, spins it, and does it. It's like, why not just keep one bullet in there? If this is the way you get off, just keep one bullet in there all the time. Why are you emptying it and filling it back up to just do this again? Is this like a kind of power play? So we can show off to Maria in her sexy little lycra or bloody leather costume? Who knows? But this is pretty much it. This guy, Dylan Blake, in the years that have passed, has become overly wealthy, I guess, and now has a lab underneath Alcatraz somehow. And here we go. And these experiments have obviously been going on a while, because we got like amphibious lickers and we got a giant shark. Now, props to the giant shark. I gotta say, for anyone who's a returning viewer on my channel, you know that any time a Resident Evil game has a shark in it, it bumps up in terms of my appreciation for it. So I did enjoy seeing that. But this entire scientist's whole story and his whole stick is that he wants the world to burn because the people in power made him kill his mate, even though his mate had been bitten by a zombie and so was going to die and kill him anyway. And that's his goal. I mean, has anyone got any theories on this guy, or is this just something that just makes no sense and is worth glossing over?
Sure. Dylan, for me, he's an absolute scumbag, isn't he, throughout the whole of it. There's no sort of redeeming features in it. And I thought one of the most brutal parts of this movie, it wasn't all the zombies, it wasn't all the mutations. It was when he picked up a box and he smashed his friend's head into the floor, and you're seeing it from his friend JJ's perspective as the box is coming forward and smashing you in the head. And I felt that. I know it's animated, and I'm suspending my disbelief with everything that's going on because I'm complaining about them not wearing helmets earlier. But that really got to me. That really shook me. But you know, Dylan, he does his research, and that was told because I got a little Easter egg for you guys that I found out. You know, the opening credits where you start off and it goes through, and you might just think this is a little bit mindless. This is just us seeing some snippets of older parts of interactions between some of the characters. No, that's meant to be Dylan doing his research on them, because once they arrive at Alcatraz, he notices them on the monitor and he goes, ooh, they've arrived. So it's all part of his master plan. And I believe the whole thing with the gun is that he sort of believes in fate. He believes he wasn't going to die at that point. And I think he was just saying that you're going to die another way. He knows everybody was going to die because he referred to that torture device, didn't he? Which later paid off when he sacrificed himself to become part of the mutation at the end. He talked about the torture device, which I believe's been in Saw, okay? Big Saw fan as well, where they put someone inside a pig and they light it on fire, and you can hear the sound of the pig because it's someone inside screaming. I believe that was sort of his reference. But just to go back to your point on the Doctor, Davey, I don't think he's a researcher really, or anything to do with T-virus. He was more connected to robotics, because I think his origins to do with the Defense Agency Research Project Agency, if I can get that one out, and he specialized in robotic engineering, and that's where the mosquito technology came from. So I think the Dr. Antonio Taylor, he was sort of responsible for that side of things, as opposed to the research to create, these super zombies. Or that's my impression anyway.
I'm not going that in depth, but my opinion of the fella is he's a loony. That is basically it. The whole thing with his backstory, like you said, Davey, was, he had to kill his friend. His friend was an arsehole. His friend wiped out their entire team and got infected. Fucking it. And then was like, please don't kill me. What do you want from him? And he's like, I don't want to kill you. He's just murdered all of your mates. And you've watched him do it. You've seen what they become. And he's killed them for it. And now he's going to become one. You think, I can't. Yes, you can. And then instead of just putting him out of his misery, you keep smashing. It's not even at that point. You started enjoying it, mate. He killed him in like 2 hits. And he just kept going. We saw the same flashback. The only flashbacks we saw of that villain, whatever, was 3 of the same flashback, and sure, they slightly got a bit further along, but it's not a backstory. I think a villain arc is definitely doesn't warrant it. I mean, sure, maybe you hate your job and it's a bit ropes, but you know what you're signing up for, especially if you're heading into a massive infected raccoon city. Sure, you wouldn't know about the infection prior, but you'd be like, he was going to be a zombie. Oh, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, actually, sound. Yeah, I'm glad I smashed his head into the concrete. Fair play. And his whole plan is lofty at best, with these little bio flies, and which, for some reason, infect people instantly until they don't. For some reason.
Yeah.
It's absolutely ridiculous, that villain. I thought it was lofty. Like you said, the Russian roulette makes literally no sense. And he actually only ever shoots 1 bullet throughout the whole film, which is at that Taylor fella. So he could have just killed him there. Doesn't make sense. And when he does kill him, the whole thing is him saying to Jill, you need to kill your friend to save his life. And then he kills him anyway. So she doesn't. It makes no sense. Fella had no idea what he was doing.
The worst thing about it is that he's on about like making Jill feel this. The whole point of Resident Evil 6 is that Chris is feeling loss for his team that keep dying. So Chris could, literally has gone through what this guy is on about, and he's fine. But that just didn't come up in his files, I guess. Because that's the entire point of Resident Evil 6 for Chris, is that entire scene where he goes in and Ada has that infection grenade, and it just wipes out everyone, and that one guy is like, no, Chris, no, and turns into a statue in front of him, no, and he's sat in the bar drinking, right? Chris has done this, and he's come out the other side. This guy just needs a bit of therapy, I reckon. But turns out, no, just do it to Jill. Jill can go through what Chris did as well, because, yeah, why not?
Chris just didn't update his Facebook status during Resident Evil 6, so he didn't know about that at all. He just glossed over that one.
Yeah, just wasn't tweeting about it. Just survived a Harrier attack, lol. Yeah, none of that stuff. But you're right though, Spence. The big thing about this virus is, and I thought, to be honest, in terms of the way this virus is delivered through these robot insect bites, super cool. I mean, how the hell do you stop that? That's so hard to stop. Sure, breathing is pretty solid to stop. So if anything, the original T-virus is actually probably a better way to administer a lot of infections, right? But the whole point with this is that it can be targeted. So you can specify who you want to turn, so you can go after world leaders or whatever. And that's really quite clever. I did like that. But it just got one major downside, and that's as soon as it interacts with someone who's a main character, it seems to take fucking ages. Because they were literally, Rebecca's be able to cook up the virus, get over there, have her entire team wiped out, land at the bottom of Alcatraz, work her way up throughout the entire facility to then give it to these people, and not even one of them has turned. It's not like Chris has turned in his cell and he's zombified and you've got to turn him back, right? That would have been quite cool. How do you stop him without him attacking someone and, whatever it is? But no, everyone's just kind of all right. And then within 10 minutes, they're absolutely fine. Like, goated. Like, to the point where Leon gets into a fight with Maria, the ninja woman, who's like the kind of Wesker of this story, if you will. Where she's got like, she's augmented, isn't she, with these powers. And he's getting blasted about the place. Like, absolutely the shit kicked into him. And then all of a sudden, a couple of minutes into that fight, he has, I guess what it's supposed to be is like him having this, like, everything's worn off and now he's back to full power. And then he just takes her out in like one combo, right? Somehow does that. It just doesn't last anywhere near long enough, this T-Virus. I think it's just a completely flawed product, as long as you're a main cast member of Resident Evil.
You say somehow? You've played Resident Evil 4? Man's a ninja with those feet. Jesus Christ, one kick of that is knocking someone out, and he did that to Maria. He knocked her into a pylon and then... He got her. I believe that part of it. I could see it. I could see Leon being that strong with his legs that he could kick someone and kill someone. He does it in Resident Evil 4, why not? Come on.
Yeah, true. It is more powerful than a shotgun blast. So maybe it is on point there. He's got those dynamite legs. But, I mean, that entire fight, we might as well skip forward to that now, because nothing really happens so much. We got the fight in the sewers, I guess, with all the liquors. Anyone got anything to say about that? I mean, to me, it was just an average action scene.
Sure, lickers die in one shot. Are they playing it on easy?
It's true. It's true. I think the big point in that whole scene is that, you mentioned it earlier, Davey. That's the first time Jill and Leon have ever met. It actually is. And they're like, Leon? Jill? It's like, what? How'd you know each other? They literally have never met in any canon ever. And they're like, oh, Jill, how you been? Do you have a gun? Here you go. Gives her a gun. That's a random bird to him. And he's probably thinking, oh, she's quite strong. I should probably actually try kill her. But no. They're like, oh, Chris has told me about you. Or Claire's told me about you or something. But why can they recognize each other? It doesn't make a lot of sense.
They've been to a lot of these Biohazard Christmas meetups, mate. So all the BSAA get together. They invite everyone over who's influential in Resident Evil, but for some reason Barry doesn't get the invites. And that's it. And then that's it. They all just get to know each other over a Christmas lunch.
I think it's rest in peace Ada, really. Boy's moved on. He's seen a new girl in town. And that liquor was interested in her. There was a slow pan, wasn't there, where the camera went straight up at the front of her. And you saw the liquor's tongue, and it was a little bit, But yeah, there wasn't much else in that scene. But as I said, those liquors went down quick, didn't they?
And the gasoline that he threw, that had enough in there to cause basically a nuke. It was like Raccoon City just exploded. And it was only like a little tiny thing. But I thought, oh, that's video game logic. You know, the explosions that come out of these barrels are insane, right? So I went along with that. But yeah, it kind of flashes forward. Then you get that massive fight then with Leon and Maria, which we've already mentioned. I got to say, as much as it was kind of cheesy that he just killed her in like one actual combo, the choreography was great around that fight. I really liked how she was like bending the pipe around his arms, that he was struggling. He was really getting the shit kicked out of him, really. It's a shame, in a way, that they've killed her off, because I feel like she's a character that, sure, she was in the last one and she's returning again now. I feel like they could do even more with her in terms of like actually having a character arc and seeing where she goes. Instead of being on this revenge quest, maybe she could have turned against the Doctor and helped them in the end, and then it kind of goes off from there. She walks away into the sunset, and then does she appear again in the future to help our guys? Maybe, right? But a bit of a shame to see her go out this way.
For those who don't know, Maria Gomez, her father dies in Vendetta. And he's the genetically enhanced human who was the bodyguard for Glenn. He looked a little bit like Bane, just to kind of try and refresh her memory a little bit on her father, that obviously gets killed in the previous one. So that's why she's out for revenge. But yeah, I thought it was a little sad that they got rid of her, and a little premature, really, because I think they could have done a lot with that family, possibly her appearing in future sort of animated series as a bit of a returning bad guy. But I like the way she ended. She got ended with that thing through her chest. I thought that was very apt.
Spence, you're always sad to see a hot woman go out. Did this impact you?
It's just a shame, really, isn't it? It's just a damn shame. What a babe that has just gone with the wind. And to be fair, I thought, like you said, that choreography in that fight scene was actually really good. It was great. And the way she's flipping about, doing all this. Leon had no right in winning that fight. And he won, like you said, in one combo with the power of his legs, which I'm sure he's never trained chest in his life. It's all leg day every day. And then he has like a week rest before he goes on a mission. Because, you know, your legs, he's probably wobbling out the gym. But it's all leg day every day. Kung Fu on the weekends. One combo is all it took. Because a pole's sticking out in the back. And it's like, man, she punched concrete and it smashed. And she's holding a bar against you and you're actually kind of fighting her off. You have no right, my friend, Mr. Leon, Mr. Kennedy. He should have lost that fight within about 20 seconds. It's ridiculous. But Leon lives. And you know what? As much as a hot babe going out with the wind, it's for my boy Leon. So I'd rather her go than Leon go. Because they'll make another one. There'll be more. There's always more, but there'll never be another Leon. So that's fine. I'll accept that.
And so from that dramatic fight, we then move to a scene where bloody Dylan's standing there and he's released the floodgates. The water's all filling up. And he says, time for me to atone for my actions. And then injects himself, which I thought, how is he atoning? With this action, I have no idea. And it's also, he's obviously choreographed that with the shark underneath, because he falls off into the ocean and the shark then gets him. What if the shark was too busy munching off all the rest of Rebecca's team and just didn't bother, or saw another orca? He might just sunk to the bottom of that thing and they thought, oh well, that was anticlimactic. Could have been nothing else to it. But shark was there and they fuse into a massive monolith of a creature. Now this fight then is the main kind of section, I suppose, of this entire movie. It goes on for quite a long time, this fight, and they're throwing kind of everything at it. Easter eggs galore. Did this fight work for you guys? And was there a single Easter egg that you thought, ooh, I quite like that one being in there? Spence, I'll come to you first.
Sure. So the fight kind of worked for me. It started strong, where he comes out and he does a big sweep, and every single main character avoids it in their own special little way. And it's really cool kind of looking at how they're all doing it. Like Claire's doing a sick flip. I think Leon's jumped off a bar behind him to go above it. And just stuff like that. I think Rebecca literally let down. That was it. Because what's Rebecca going to do? Come on. She's at home behind a desk. But it's quite a good scene, other than it's quite obvious that the monster never actually tries to kill anyone. Because he really doesn't. He just lets them pick out guns from crates whenever they want. And if someone says, "Oi mate," he'll be like, "Oh, I'll come for you now." Instead of that person holding a rocket launcher over there. He doesn't seem like he really knows what he's trying to do. But the scene itself is cool. There's jeeps, buggies, there's rocket launchers, there's shotguns, there's rifles, pistols, everything. But the thing that stood out to me, and what I love to see come back, the plasma rifle. Oh, and of course, who would wield it other than Jill Valentine? Oh, baby. That was nice. That was really nice to see, and it's probably my favorite part of that final fight, of just seeing it. Everyone else is like, what is that? She's like, it's a plasma rifle, obviously. You weren't about in RE3, clearly. So I appreciated that. That's my one kind of thing from the fight. I was like, yeah, that's nice.
What about yourself, Phil?
This one caught me a little bit by surprise, really, because I didn't understand what Dylan was really going to be doing with that virus. I thought, here we go, he's standing up there, what's he going to be doing? Okay, he's going to inject himself, he's atoning for, I believe, killing his friend and, all the terrible things that he's done. That was my assumption for it. But I thought he was just going to sacrifice himself to it. But then out pops this monolith of a BOW creature, where two of them have fused together. Obviously, Dylan with the augmented T virus that he takes, and the shark beneath him. They turn into this. I don't even know how to describe it. It's not even a thing. It's just a mash of flesh and teeth and kind of Dylan's face, which looked a little awkward. But the thing that I really appreciated with it, as soon as he sort of emerged from the water, and of course all the characters rallied together, once again a la Avengers, right? They came out and the first thing they do, grab rocket launchers, because that's what you do when there's a big ass motherfucker in the way. There's a big ass BOW that you need to take down, rocket launcher, straight away. And I quite enjoyed the quad rocket launcher. And I think there was like quite a few different nods to a lot of Resident Evil weaponry. I believe all those guns had been in Resident Evil before, and I'm sure they're fan favorites, and that's why they did it. But they basically just cycled through all the different things that you've seen through all the different Resident Evil games as weapons. But yeah, that rocket launcher at the end, the double rocket launcher, that was cool, where they slammed two kind of parts of the rocket launcher together, and Leon and Chris both shot the final sort of grenade or rocket at the door, and that crushed Dylan's mutated head at the end, and then you see all this kind of pulp come to the top of the water. That was a little bit disgusting at the end as well, but I quite enjoyed it. It was a very long and drawn out section of the movie. You're right. And there was a crazy amount of weaponry down there, which was lucky that it was all there and available. Nobody locks weapons away, do they? It's all just available if you open a crate. Just Resident Evil logic or video game logic there. But yeah, I quite enjoyed the ending. Quite sad that there's no kind of continuation with this. They killed Maria, they killed Dylan, so yeah, I guess that's just the end of this now. I don't know where they go. I guess Leon maybe goes on holiday. I think he refers to that at the end, and I think he's done that quite a few times. So fingers crossed Leon gets his holiday after this one, boys.
He definitely deserves it. And I mean, I get what you guys are saying, and I really quite enjoyed most of the odes. So, especially with the rocket launcher to start with, seeing the RE1 rocket launcher that killed Tyrant and seeing that do nothing is always hype. And I quite liked how nonchalant everyone was. Like, they're in this battle, they're using weapons that have always dealt with every single attack in one go. Like, one shot of that rocket launcher decimates Tyrant. One shot of the laser cannon totally wrecks Nemesis. It takes a second one to the face to absolutely finish him off. And they're all just cycling through stuff. Like, there's a part where they run out of bullets, and then next thing you know, and the part I cracked up is you see Chris, and he's one-handling like an M29, like he's Rambo with the bullet feeds all coming off his hand, and he's just one-handing it from the hip, and I was just burst out laughing on that. And then you see Leon then is gets an AA-12 automatic shotgun and just puts the barrel in it, like a massive circle barrel, and he just jumps up on the top of its head and he's like straight into it. And I was like, how can they kill this thing? Like, they've shot literally everything at it. Who knew that it would take this special double-hander, two-man operated rocket launcher to really seal the deal? But the only one that didn't work for me, that did work for you, Spence, the plasma rifle. I thought, come on, man. Come on. This is so on. This is staring me in the face and slapping me. They might as well have said Jill Sandwich in there. Or she might as well have thrown a sandwich box at him that said Jill Sandwiches or something. Because it was that level. Where I was like, oh, of course she's got this. Of course she's got to charge it. And it wasn't as if the second shot did finish him off. So it was a true, proper Easter egg. Yes, this thing's on the par with Nemesis. It was oh, we'll shoot once, and then he's just going to destroy it, and we just got to pull some other magic trick out of our arse, which is this special rocket launcher. It would have been quite cool if they had to buy time. People were getting injured, people were getting thrown about. Maybe you see someone get really hurt. Maybe I don't know, Rebecca is up in the watchtower just watching there, thinking, oh god, I've done nothing this entire fight, I better do something. And then boom, it comes through, and she's bleeding out, everyone's panicking. It's a moment where Jill's got to choose then between, do I save my team with this laser that's counting up really slowly, or do I do something else? Maybe to lure it away and be reckless and go against what Chris has told me. But no, they kind of just thought, oh yeah, we'll just abandon that now, and now it's the next gizmo that's going to end it. And I thought that was a bit of a shame, really.
It wasn't even that big gizmo that ended it. It's all that did. It dropped the gate down, sure, which kind of crushed his head and stuff. Nice. But it was just a bag of grenades. That's all it was. Jill shoved it in his mouth, and that's what was choking her, and she ended up cutting it. And she leaves a grenade in the water as she leaves. It was literally a bag of probably 6 grenades. And then boom, the entire thing blows up. It'd gone through rocket launchers, shotguns, machine guns, jeeps exploding inside of it, a freaking plasma rifle. Nah, can't beat a good old bag of grenades. Lovely stuff. It's so stupid. It was absolutely stupid.
And not a scratch on any of our heroes. I think, as Davey said, it would have been a lot better if there was, you know, some humans in that sort of warehouse and they have got cut or they have got squashed or they got killed or eaten or something like that to really build the drama a little bit more, because these 5, they've dealt with this stuff before. They were just like, here we go again. They were so au fait with using the weaponry. There was no panic. The way Jill was talking to the monster, saying, come on, you know, like, she wasn't running away in fear. She was suckering him in. She knew how to deal with all these monsters. And the threat for me just really wasn't there. I just appreciated seeing all the weaponry and all the kind of spectacle of it, rather than actually thinking, oh God, this could go sideways for our stars here. But no, they had it covered. They had it fully covered from the start. It wasn't an issue.
No, and I think that really ties up the entire movie in terms of, it's just a bit of a shame really that, for me, Resident Evil works the best when there's kind of background information that helps paint the picture for what you're doing. And I mean, I guess this works best in a video game, but I would have wanted there to be more. I think that this film could have probably been maybe another half hour long and just slowed the pace down quite a bit. Slow it down. Don't have it like riddle through one thing after the next, one action scene to the other. Just try and bring some character into this and add some stakes. And I think without that, the entire thing is just a romp. And if that's what you're in for and you think, yeah, these animated films, they are just an action fest, then fair enough. You know, I think this is something that you're going to walk away from and really enjoy, because I think it is better than most of the other animated films I've seen. But for me, I think the parts of the franchise that I really look for in this just aren't there. There's no stakes, there's no drama, there's no worry. And I tell you what there isn't, Phil, and I bet you were gutted with this, no sideways lift and no countdown to explode.
I was literally going to say that, you know, those are the things I really look for in video games. We had it in Metal Gear Solid, we had it in Resident Evil. I believe there was elements of that within Dino Crisis. These are things I love and look for. But yeah, no sideways lift. There was no Half-Life lift going all the way down. There was none of that kind of stuff happening. And yeah, there was no countdown to a big explosion on the island. But of course they couldn't wipe out Alcatraz, could they? Like, the setting is cool. You got to keep that prison alive. It's like a spectacle, a thing people go and visit in America. So I don't think they'd want to, you know, wipe off, you know, a monument in America. Probably that's a little bit of a no-no, really. So I can kind of understand why they didn't. But I think they did have that pan away, didn't they, at the end of the movie, where it went off and you could see all the ocean. And that happens in video games. That's a video game trope. So I suppose that was good enough.
So I suppose final thoughts on the film, guys. We've covered quite a bit. I don't think we've really missed anything out. I mean, is there anything else that anybody wants to bring to the table on this while we bring this to a close?
The only thing I could say is that I think I'd have enjoyed this movie more if a single character showed a single expression throughout the entire film. Because every single one of them was just a clean slate, no matter what emotion they were experiencing. It was the exact same face throughout, other than once, when Dylan smiled. And that was it. Other than him smiling at the end, or once he realised his plan was coming to fruition, it was the exact same face throughout. No one ever looked scared. No one looked happy. No one ever looked surprised. It was just, oh, he looks quite bored, really, actually, throughout the entire thing. Claire's in pain about to turn, and she's like, just with the same face throughout the whole thing. Show some expression. It's animation. Do what you like. Come on.
The person that should have shown more kind of expression in their face, especially when you've got 5 of the well-known characters within Resident Evil that haven't failed a mission yet. They come up, they destroy all the zombies, they save the planet, and they kill the big BOW at the end. So it should have been Dylan really shitting a brick when he saw those 5 turn up on his island. I think he should have been the one really in danger. If you look at this movie from a different angle, maybe he was the one in distress, because he had no chance when they turned up on his island. It's Leon, Chris, you know, and the crew there. It's the 5 main people from Resident Evil. You didn't stand a chance. It wasn't like Barry turned up or just one of the minor characters. No, it was the big 5. You were fucked from the start, bro.
We say that, however, I think they actually did a really shit job, all 5 of them. I mean, they saved the world. That's lovely. There's not a single tourist or person on the island before they got there that actually survived. Not one. Every single person on Alcatraz was wiped out other than them. They did an awful job of it, of keeping anyone alive, which is, well, to be fair, everyone always dies. They're actually really bad, every single one, at keeping anyone alive, other than whoever's not there at the time. They can save everyone else, but they have to sacrifice so many to do it.
There's a lot of collateral damage in Resident Evil, and this was a lot of collateral damage. Like, not even at one point when Rebecca was like, oh yeah, do you know what, I probably can get a cure for this. Not at one point did anyone be like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have killed every single person that turned. Maybe, we know this virus doesn't spread through saliva. Maybe we could have just put them in the cells and treated them later. No, immediately turn, immediately shot. These are just people biting people now at this point. If the virus isn't going to get them, how much damage can a bite really do? I mean, I know these are zombies, right? And so a bite is really bad. It can take people out. But really, you can do like what we talk about on the podcast all the time when you're facing against wild animals. Just sacrifice your arm and just take them in. Just wrap something around your arm and just put them in the cells. No one cares about that though, because these missions, there's a lot of casualties, but it's all for the greater good. And I think that brings this to a close. We have gone a lot longer than I thought we would. We've nearly gone the length of the movie discussing this, and we have really torn it apart quite a lot throughout this entire thing. But I think it's fair to say that we all did enjoy it overall. I definitely didn't feel like I came out of it and wasted my time. I felt time went quick enough, and I thought it was good for what it is. It's not what I look for in the series, but it's better than some of the other entries that I'm sure, if you guys have enjoyed this one, we'll end up getting to and covering. And I suppose that's where I'll hand it over to you, the audience. If you enjoyed this, please let me know. If you want more and you want us to go back through every single live action Resident Evil and animated, I'm open to sit down with the boys and talk through all of them, as much as it will pay me to see Welcome to Raccoon City again. I'll leave that up to you guys. Let me know in the comments section. If you've enjoyed this, remember to put a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you want to see more from Spence and Phil, and of course myself, you can check us out on In PS We Trust. It's a PlayStation podcast that launches every single fortnight on a Wednesday. You can find it on all major podcasting services and right here on YouTube as well. I'll leave links in the description. Thank you guys for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure to be with you. Your final sign-offs, guys. Let's get them done.
Well, thank you very much, Davey. It's been an absolute honour being on the channel and getting to discuss this slightly above average Resident Evil movie. I really enjoyed it. I didn't get to give my rating at the start of the show, but it was a 6 out of 10 for this one, because it's good, it's okay, it's fun if you're a Resident Evil fan, and I am a Resident Evil fan, and I did have fun. So once again, thank you very much. I hope your viewers and your listeners enjoyed the show. Please let us know in the comments if you'd like to see us back here, because I'm up for it, apart from maybe Welcome to Raccoon City. I might dip on that one. Might be on holiday when we have to review that one. I don't want to be forced to do that again.
And from me, mate, cheers for having me on. Always a good time chatting to you boys. I mean, we do it regularly on a show anyway, but it's nice to actually just talk about one single thing for once. Albeit a mediocre Resident Evil animated movie. But I don't appreciate this slander on Welcome to Raccoon City, because it's my favourite live action one. So if we do that one, I'm here for it, and I will watch it again. I'm fuming I had to watch this one twice, not gonna lie to you. I watched it last week and I watched it again just for this. So I hope listeners, watchers, everyone, you need to appreciate that. We watched this twice for you. You're welcome. But it was fun to discuss. It was fun to discuss. Thanks for having us on, mate. It was a great time.
Thank you ever so much for your time. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. See ya.